In 2021, a team of Italian and American scientists pointed a ground-penetrating radar at the floor of the Colosseum in Rome. They expected to confirm what everyone already knew. What they found broke archaeology. Because underneath the Colosseum, underneath the underground corridors that researchers had been studying for over a century, there was another entire level. A hidden world that no one knew existed. And here's what makes that so insane. The Colosseum is the most studied ancient building in human history. Millions of tourists visit every year. Thousands of scientists have dedicated their careers to it. Hundreds of books have described every stone, every arch, every inch of that structure. And it still had a secret. So today, we're going underground. We're going to talk about what's already down there, which is already one of the most impressive things Rome ever built, and then we're going to talk about what was just discovered underneath that. Because the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. The underground world everyone forgot. Let's start with what we already knew. When Emperor Vespasian began building the Colosseum in 72 AD, he chose a location that made his engineers sweat. The site had been a lake. An artificial lake, part of Emperor Nero's massive palace complex, the Domus Aurea, or Golden House, built after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. Nero had taken that land for himself. So Vespasian drained it and gave it back to the people. That was the message. The tyrant stole the land for his own pleasure. The new emperor returns it as a gift. But building on the bed of a drained lake is an engineering nightmare. The ground is soft, waterlogged, unstable. It couldn't support a massive stone structure. So the Romans did what the Romans always did. They solved it with brute force. They dug a deep foundation, poured in concrete and rubble, and created a base so solid it has held the Colosseum upright for 2,000 years, through earthquakes, floods, and the fall of civilization itself. The Colosseum opened in 80 AD under Vespasian's son, Titus. The opening games lasted 100 days. According to ancient sources, 1,000 animals and hundreds of gladiators died in that opening stretch alone. But here's something most people don't know about the early Colosseum. There were no underground chambers. None. In its first years, the arena floor was just that, a flat wooden platform surrounded by seating. And it was used not just for gladiator fights, but for something almost impossible to imagine today. Naval battles. They flooded it. They actually flooded the arena and staged full-scale mock sea battles, called naumachii, with real ships and real combat. 50,000 spectators watched warships fighting each other inside a stone box in the middle of a city. How exactly they did this is still one of the most debated questions in Roman archaeology. Some believe a specially built aqueduct fed the water in. Others think they used cisterns and canals inherited from Nero's lake. No one is completely sure. But then, around 80 AD, under Emperor Domitian, everything changed. Domitian wanted the shows to be more spectacular, more theatrical, more magical. So he ordered the construction of the hypogeum, the underground network of corridors, chambers, and mechanic systems that would turn the Colosseum into something no one had ever seen before. The naval battles became impossible. You can't flood a floor that has a city underneath it. But what the Romans lost in water, they more than made up for in wonder. Imagine sitting in the stands. The arena floor is there below you. Flat. Empty. Silent. And then, without warning, a tree rises from the ground. Then another. Then a rock formation. Then a forest. Birds appear. Deer scatter across the sand. And then the trapdoors open, and lions come up from below. That's what the hypogeum made possible. The underground was an engineering marvel. Dozens of elevators, wooden platforms raised and lowered by ropes, pulleys, and counterweights operated by teams of workers below. Each lift could carry a cage with an animal, a piece of scenery, a group of fighters, or even a small structure. The trap doors on the arena floor were hidden under sand, and spectators had no idea where the next one would open. That unpredictability was part of the show. Below the arena floor, there was essentially an underground city. Corridors for moving animals and people. holding cells for lions, tigers, leopards, bears, giraffes, crocodiles, animals shipped in from every corner of the empire. North Africa sent lions and leopards. Germany sent bears. India sent tigers. Egypt sent hippos. Hundreds of animals were kept underground at any given time. Ancient writers describe how the sound of their growls and roars could be heard in the streets surrounding the Colosseum, a low, constant rumble rising from the earth, like the ground itself was alive. There were also quarters for gladiators, storage rooms, drainage channels, and a special tunnel connecting the Hypogeum directly to the Ludus Magnus, the largest gladiator training school in Rome, located just a few hundred feet to the east. That tunnel was the last road for a lot of men. Gladiators would descend into the tunnel at the school, walk through the dark underground passage while hearing the roar of 50,000 people above them, and then rise through the arena floor to fight. Many of them never walked back. For the crowd, the gladiator appeared as if from nowhere. Another piece of magic. For the gladiator, that dark stone corridor was everything. His last walk. His last moment alone before the crowd decided whether he lived or died. Over 4 centuries of active use, historical estimates suggest somewhere between 400,000 and 1 million people died in the Colosseum's arena. And over 1 million animals. The sand, the word, arena, literally means sand in Latin, and that wasn't an accident, absorbed blood. It had to be replaced multiple times during a single day of games. Old, blood-soaked sand was lowered through hatches into the Hypogeum, removed, and fresh sand was brought up. The blood drainage system connected to the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, and carried blood, waste, and everything else directly into the Tiber River, which ran through the city. After the last recorded games in the 6th century AD, the Colosseum began to die slowly. The underground filled with dirt, debris, and rainwater. By the Middle Ages, people had forgotten it was there. The entrances to the Hypogeum were buried. Plants and trees grew inside the arena. People lived inside the Colosseum, squatters, merchants, artists, completely unaware that directly beneath their feet was a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. It wasn't until the 19th century, when the first archaeological excavations began, that the Hypogeum was partially cleared and opened for study. What scientists found caused a sensation. The most complex network of corridors, fragments of lifting mechanisms, animal cages, drainage channels. The Romans had built, underneath the arena, something like theatrical machinery on an invisible scale. Technology that had no equivalent in the ancient world, and had been forgotten for 1,500 years. By the early 2000s, the Hypogeum had been mapped, catalogued, modeled in 3 dimensions, written about extensively. Tours were offered in limited groups. The scientific community was confident. We know everything there is to know. That confidence lasted until 2021. The discovery that changed everything. The new generation of ground-penetrating radar that emerged in the late 2010s is a different technology entirely. Previous radar systems could detect large voids a few meters underground, but lacked the resolution to see detail. The new systems can illuminate the Earth down to 20 or 30 meters with a resolution of just a few centimeters. It's essentially an X-ray for the ground. The team from La Sapienza University in Rome, working alongside colleagues from Stanford, conducted a systematic scan of the ground around and beneath the Colosseum. They worked at night, and there were no tourists and vibrations from traffic were minimal, moving the radar antennas across a pre-marked grid. The data was processed by a supercomputer, which assembled thousands of individual scans into a 3-dimensional map of the underground space. And the map didn't look like what they expected. Beneath the famous Hypogeum, the labyrinth of corridors and chambers discovered in the 19th and 20th centuries, the radar detected another system of structures entirely. At a depth of 6 to 12 meters below the floor of the Hypogeum, the radar registered walls, corridors, and enclosed spaces. The outlines were too regular, too geometric to be natural formations. These were man-made constructions. Someone had built them. And they were deeper than anything previously known to exist inside the Colosseum. What is it? Researchers have proposed several theories, and none of them are boring. The first possibility: these are the foundations of the original hypogeum, built by Domitian in the 1st century AD. Over time, as the Colosseum was modified, expanded, and renovated, earlier structures may have been buried under newer ones, layer upon layer. The second possibility is more exciting. Some of the corridors detected by the scan appear to extend beyond the perimeter of the amphitheater itself, pointing in the direction of the Palatine Hill, where the imperial palaces were located. Ancient texts describe secret underground passages that allowed the emperor to enter and exit the Colosseum without ever being seen by the public. These passages have been referenced in historical sources for centuries. No one has ever found them. If the radar has discovered the Emperor's Tunnel, it would be one of the most significant archaeological finds in decades. There's also a third clue buried in the skin data. In several locations, the radar detected anomalies that researchers believe may be fragments of an ancient water system. Pipes or channels, buried at a depth of around 10 meters. If confirmed, this could finally answer one of Roman archaeology's oldest questions. How did they flood the Colosseum? The ancient sources say the Naumachii, the naval battles, happened. That's documented. But the engineering behind it has been a mystery for 200 years. How did they fill an arena 80 meters wide in a practical amount of time? How did they drain it again quickly enough to hold the next event? The answer may literally be underground, waiting to be excavated. And there's one more thing the radar found. Anomalies around the outer perimeter of the foundation. Structures extending well beyond the visible footprint of the Colosseum itself. It's known that around the amphitheater there were support buildings, weapon workshops, gladiator barracks, the sanitarium where the wounded were taken, and the morgue where the dead were brought. But the exact locations of most of these buildings are unknown. They were destroyed or built over during the Middle Ages. The radar may have found their foundations. And if that's confirmed, it would allow historians, for the first time, to reconstruct the entire Colosseum complex, not just the amphitheater, but everything that surrounded and supported it. In 2023, construction was completed on a new retractable arena floor, a platform that covers the hypogeum and restores the Colosseum to something approaching its original appearance, when the arena was just a flat surface surrounded by seats. The new floor will allow concerts, exhibitions, and ceremonies to be held in the arena for the first time in 1,500 years. The idea has sparked intense debate. Some see it as a brilliant way to restore life to the space. Others see it as a desecration, turning a monument to suffering into an entertainment platform. But here's the strange irony of it all. While workers were installing that new floor, the radar data was telling them that directly beneath their hands, there was another unknown level waiting to be discovered. A level deeper than the Colosseum itself. A level that may remember Nero and his Golden Garden, or what existed even before Nero. The Roman Republic. Its temples, its streets, its dead. Rome is a city built 20 meters above its own history. Every century added a new layer on top of the previous one. The Colosseum, for all its grandeur, is just one of the upper floors. When construction began on the Rome Metro in the 1960s, every station became an archaeological excavation. The newest line, Line C, took more than 20 years to build because workers couldn't dig a single meter without hitting an ancient building, a medieval foundation, or an Etruscan tomb. Under every square meter of Roman soil, there are, on average, 5 or 6 distinct historical layers. Rome isn't a city. It's an archaeological layer cake. And we live on the frosting. The Colosseum, at the center of the ancient city, is the most layered place of all. Beneath Nero's structures lie Republican-era buildings. Beneath those, traces of the early Republic. Deeper still, signs of Etruscan presence. And at the very bottom, geological layers from a time when there was nothing on this site but marshland and hills. The ground-penetrating radar can see all of it, layer after layer, like the rings of a tree where each ring is a century. When tourists walk through the hypogeum of the Colosseum today and see the tunnels where lions once paced and gladiators once waited, they think they're seeing the bottom. They think there's nothing below but rock and earth. The radar proved otherwise. Below the bottom, there is another bottom. And below that, perhaps another one still. We don't know how many levels there are. We don't know what's inside them. We don't know whose shadows pass through those corridors, which haven't seen light in 2,000 years. We only know one thing. The Colosseum, like all of Rome, is far deeper than it appears. And every time we think we've reached the floor, it turns out the floor was just the ceiling of the next room down.